The latest episode of Pokémon Twilight Wings was pretty cool. We really got to feel how impressive the wild area is while also getting really good character development for Bee. It does feel like this series is bringing all of the stories in Galar together in a really wonderful way. But it was the part at the end that got a lot of people scratching their heads, or at least theorizing as to what's going on. Here's my reaction. Why can't we go to that place in the wild area? That'd be sick. And immediately after that, I really didn't know what to say because my mind was trying to unravel it. Like, is it possible that Bee somehow found her way to the Isle of Armor because the rest of the wild area seemed pretty familiar? I didn't say anything because I felt that it was kind of a crackpot theory at the same time, but other people are bringing it up and it's just something I guess worth talking about. So if you end up enjoying the video, don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends, and comment down below, especially at the end of the video. Watch all the video, take in all the information I'm going to be dropping, and then really tell me how you feel. Is this the Isle of Armor, or is it just some kind of anime flair to represent the wild area? So yeah, you look at that, and that's different to anything in the wild area, but then you look at the Isle of Armor picture that we got, that beautiful blue hue coastal setting. It's same energy. It's very big, same energy. And then you just look at the map of the wild area from the Galar region, and you really can't find anything about it. There's a lot more brown in the cliff face. There's kind of like that rainbow-ish looking rock on the shoreline, but none of that's really accessible, and it doesn't really feel like Bee made it there, and that it kind of goes in line with some of the other parts that we saw of the wild area. So it just kind of doesn't feel like it fits in the episode. And then going back to the other picture of the Isle of Armor, it just feels very similar. I mean, there's even like a cave. So we have this wonderful blue water. We kind of like surf through a cave. We do a little bit of exploration, and then we come out in roughly the same kind of area. This marble white stone that even seems to have like a very similar texture. So I wanted to kind of like get deeper into this one because what confused me is, like I said, when I was rewatching it, I was doing my reaction, I was trying to like think about the entire episode within a couple of seconds and figure out some commentary to throw down because it feels like we got dropped off in the wild area in Galar, the one that we're used to, because it shows us in the desert, and it's an incredibly similar desert. I think they're trying to make it that familiar. Like, yeah, this is the wild area, you know, and it's close in that kind of way. Also, we get a lot of other like little glimpses of the wild area, but this is the most impressive one, you know, Pokemon Breath of the Wild area kind of feel. However, it also looks like the wild area. We have the desert in the middle, and then just kind of runs through the little canyon into fields, lakes, and sprawling stuff. Like, it almost looks like we have the Giant's Mirror on the left, and then off to the right, it could just kind of go into the Lake of Outrage, but it's not quite the same as the games, depending on the angle that you're coming from, because if we're doing that going from north to south, we got some problems in the way. For starters, the colors don't match. So that's what also makes it really weird. Like, just because she ended up in a white cove at the end of the episode doesn't mean that it can't be the wild area of Galar that we're familiar with, because throughout the rest of the episode, it's more white than the brown that we're used to. And then when we look in the games, like, yeah, it's brown, but also Motostoke's in the way. We got the bridge, we got the train bridge, but it is still fairly close because desert's in the middle, and then all the other crazy terrains and, you know, environments that we find in the wild area are still there. Now, looking from the other side, it also does have a same energy kind of vibe. And if we ignore man-made structures, it feels really close, if not just kind of like from the wrong direction. So if we kind of had this height, because we don't have this much height in the north part of the wild area looking down. So I mean, if we had effectively this angle and then just really capturing as much of the wild area as possible, it would be pretty close. But it looks like the animation's trying to say like, yo, this is the wild area. It's wild. It's undeveloped. You just have to take a Corviknight taxi, you get dropped off, and then you're in something that's effectively half the size of the Galar region. There's no people, no buildings, nothing for a long time. But it still kind of feels like the wild area in the other Pokemon Sword and Shield anime, because Ash and Go have already been to the wild area. So they're really mixing in that Generation 8 stuff early on in the series, but it feels different. You know, we don't see these cliff sides. We don't see these brilliant mountain feeling kind of terrains. It just kind of feels more like the Safari Zone in Kanto. It feels very close to Safari Zone in Kanto. Now, I did get some of those vibes while first watching Twilight Wings, but not as much as the Pokemon Sword and Shield anime, and even then, just like plains. Just like plains and paths and you run around and you find some Pokemon. So it does kind of like break it up. It also shows that, you know, Twilight Wings is not the definitive way the wild area is expressed. So it seems like the games in the anime have their own vision of what the wild area is supposed to be, instead of just being like strictly this is always how the wild area is represented. Whether or not it's the limitations of the game or the direction that the different series have, it just doesn't have like a clearly defined way of saying, alright, this is the wild area, so that means where B was means it isn't the wild area. It's like the wild area of the Isle of Armor, therefore Isle of Armor confirmed, or something weird like that. I'm not feeling it. And then going back to B's wild area adventure, we see quite a bit of unfamiliar scenery. Did she go from the Galar wild area to the Isle of Armor wild area at some point? Where is the Isle of Armor? Because that could be very good as well. Like, if you notice here on the Galar map, the part in the north is separated. Is Winden on its own separate island? Is this actually the Isle of Armor, but it didn't get any kind of name? Because there's a lot of terrain going on back there. I thought that that was going to be like a post-game, or if they did a third version. So effectively, Pokemon Sword and Shield Expansion Pass is the third version of the game, and that would be like some kind of special area with another wild area inside of it. So it would make sense if that was the Isle of Armor, and that's where like the coloration starts to come through. That we have kind of the same mountains, we have the same white colors with all the fields and forests and trees and all the other stuff. Is this actually where B is hanging out, and she really didn't stray too far from where we expect the Galar region to be? But then that got me thinking about the Pokemon world, because if we keep on going north, it's going to get colder, right? Well, at least for me and 90% of my audience, since we live in the northern hemisphere. Now, the Isle of Armor seems not quite tropical, but at least more temperate, and when B's running around, she's effectively in a one-piece swimsuit. So, doesn't really seem that way. Does that mean the Galar region is actually in like the southern hemisphere of the Pokemon world? It would make sense that way. And the thing is, I thought about this. I went back and rewatched the Pokemon DLC Expansion Pass trailer, and I think my theory was confirmed. Because when it shows the Crown Tundra, it actually pans south through the Galar region and then starts to reveal the Crown Tundra as though that's where it is. So you go directly south on the southern hemisphere, it's going to get colder, and that's where we end up in the cold wasteland of the Crown Tundra. Now, another funny thing is I actually started watching the trailer halfway through, and I noticed the thing about the Crown Tundra, so I had to go back to the beginning and then pay attention to see what's happening with the Isle of Armor, and actually pans over to the east. So it doesn't go north to whatever island Winden is on, it goes to a completely separate area, which kind of makes it harder for B to get there, but it's kind of just like adjacent to the wild area, which makes it even more weird. And then another thing to note is that we see multiple images of the Isle of Armor. So there's forests, there's fields. It's not just going to be white cliffs like we see both in Twilight Wings and also for all the other art of the Isle of Armor. There's islands, there's some vibrance going on, so it's just different. However, it gives us an idea of what else to look for. But now that means she had to have gone into a mountain, go down, go under the ocean, and then pop up somewhere in the Isle of Armor. That seems a little tricky. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but looking at that picture, she seems quite elevated. That this little cove is not quite sea level, and I imagine that there's kind of like, you know, some kind of waterfall going off into the ocean off of a cliff or something. So she had to go down quite a bit, and then up quite a bit. But it still might be possible because of what else we see inside the episode when she gets lost in the cave that has all these beautiful crystals inside of it. This isn't Galar Mine number 1, so this doesn't put us on the west coast of Galar, and it seems closer to Galar Mine number 2, especially with the types of crystals and the colors of the crystals predominantly being blue, and I guess there's a little bit of that red mixed in, so it gives that purplish color, but still not quite the same. However, let's just say this is anime adaptation of Galar Mine number 2, well, that kind of gives us a better idea of where she is. Now, if we put that on the map, that's going to be just south of Holbury, which is actually directly west of the Isle of Armor, according to the panning from the trailer. That still means that she had to pull some shenanigans from Galar Mine number 2, going down over to the Isle of Armor. And even then, we get to see the inside of the caves from the Isle of Armor, and it doesn't really seem the same. So we do have like this cool water tunnel that we go through. Now, I don't think this is under the ocean because that actually wouldn't make sense, but there is going to be a lot of like really neat points of exploration that I'm really looking forward to with the Isle of Armor, but it doesn't look similar to what B experienced. And also, if you look at where B ended up on the right, that looks like the ocean. So that means she would have to go all the way across the Isle of Armor while underground to then end up at that part. I don't know, that just kind of seems like something on the east coast of the Galar region, maybe just on the more south side of the wild area, or just one of the really not well-defined areas of the map, and then it's just some kind of nice moment to really bring together the entire episode instead of some kind of tease for the wild area. I don't think that Game Freak, the Pokemon Company, or whatever animation studio is trying to like 4D chess plug the Isle of Armor so many months before release, because this is going to take months of production value for the anime to even make, and while I am convinced that the Isle of Armor was probably in development at this time, it just doesn't seem like they're trying to like push for it, you know? It's subtle, but it's not obvious enough to where people are going to be going for it, and then what's the point? It's not going to promote the Isle of Armor. It doesn't really add anything. I think they're just kind of showing cool places that you can find in the wild area or just exploration in the Galar region that kind of make it a wonderful place. Now, if this part is accessible in the Isle of Armor, that'd be super sweet, and it'd be a big surprise for me, but I'm not convinced. And again, just kind of like looking at some of the other places on the Isle of Armor, just seems like it has its own terrain. It's not only the white mountains, and just because there's some kind of cove that looks similar to one of the other pictures we have, I don't think that confirms it. That's also why my brain was breaking. There's a lot of things that make it feel like, you know, same energy as Isle of Armor, like I already said, but then you look at some of the other parts, it's like, but it doesn't make any sense. Your brain can't logically piece together. It defies physics for it to be possible. I don't know. So tell me what you guys think. Did what I show in the video kind of debunk it for you? Are you still convinced? What's your reasoning for it being in the Isle of Armor that I might have missed? I kind of like got into a lot deeper of a rabbit hole than I thought, because I wanted to make sure I checked everything. I went through and was like, oh wait, how's this look to the wild area in the Pokemon Sword and Shield anime? But then that means the geography of the wild area only makes sense if we're in the southern hemisphere, and then the rabbit hole just kind of kept on going, because I was like looking for the mines. I even said it on my initial reaction. I was like, well, that looks like Galar Mine number 2 more than Galar Mine number 1, so still being in the main island of Galar, that makes more sense to me, and then I just couldn't really piece together any other way that she ended up on the Isle of Armor. So that's what I'm going to stick to. Like I said, maybe I'm wrong, but the Pokemon Company or Game Freak would have to make a really good explanation to figure out how she ended up there, and I don't think they really cared about it that much. So, hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.